أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه. My good friends, welcome back to another discussion where we look at the Qur'an with a fresh perspective, not contaminated by the views of any historical people or ancient people, and without any fear or favor, without just honestly looking at the words of Allah. And I'm going to look at some further verses in Surah An-Nisa, the 4th chapter of the Quran, and that is the chapter that I went into in a previous episode with you, and I shared with you some of the topics and themes that are covered. And so I'm going to get now to another theme that is covered in Surah An-Nisa, which is the theme of Jihad, or of holy war. And I want to go into this topic a bit, and we're going to look at some of the verses in the Quran that addresses this topic. But before I go into it, let me just share with you a few surprising facts. And as you can see there, I want to answer the question, what is jihad and why is there such a thing as jihad? Now, the first thing is I want to give you some surprising facts, and then I'm going to go into jihad and the priesthood, how they have abused and exploited this concept. And then also I want to look at modern perceptions, the propaganda, etc. against Islam using jihad. And then finally we'll arrive at the Quran, where I'll look at the verses of the Quran and what the Quran says about jihad. And we're not going to look at all the verses. We are busy reading the Quran systematically, and the part of the Quran that I want to deal with is Surah Nisa. And then finally I will draw some inferences and I will offer you some of my reflections. So it's a fairly long discussion. You can press pause and rewatch it, but it's important that you do follow the complete argument here, that you don't try and jump and hop across this. So if you're really interested in understanding the concept, I invite you to stay tuned and to go through the entire, whatever, 30 minutes to an hour. I can't say now that this will take, but I promise you that I've done the homework and I've done the preps, and you will benefit from the effort that I've put in. So I think let us quickly look at the first point here, surprising facts. And do you realize that Hajj is regarded as a pillar by traditionalist Muslims, people who follow the Hadith before they follow the Quran? But if you had to follow the Quran before you follow the Hadith, you will actually find that jihad is more deserving of being one of the 5 pillars. And the 5 pillars are founded in Hadith. There's no Quranic ayat that speaks about 5 pillars of Islam. There are much more than 5 important aspects in Islam, as you might well know. So the 5 pillars thing, I just want to mention to you that although Hajj is regarded as a pillar in Islam, it's much less prominently mentioned in the Holy Quran, in the founding text, in the basis of the religion, the divine communique. Jihad is mentioned more than 30 times. So verses, if you're looking at verses in the Quran, you'll find that the word jihad, or a reference to jihad, a reference to fighting and waging war, is listed more than 30 times in more than 30 verses. Unlike Hajj, which I can find no more than 5 verses that actually deal with Hajj. Often mentioned, I mean, these 5 verses are repeated very often. We don't get the jihad verses being repeated that often, and so you will be forgiven for thinking that Hajj is more prominent in the Quran. It's exact opposite. Secondly, the Prophet Muhammad's record is also in favor of jihad, to a much greater degree than Hajj. How many Hajjs did the Prophet make in his lifetime? Think about it. How many Hajjs did the Prophet make in his lifetime, in the time of Islam? We have record of only one Hajj, although they call it the Hajjul Wida. It is the farewell Hajj in the Seerah. But we have only one record of a Hajj performed by the Prophet, which says a lot. I mean, it says that we know that the Prophet fought more than 27 battles. 5 or 6 of them he was actually physically fighting and getting injured in the battle. But there were 27, and some say even 80 skirmishes and battles and various forms of engagements with the enemy that the Prophet experienced. And so even in the Seerah, even in the Sunnah, if you want to look at that, there's a clear bias towards jihad. And whereas Hajj was just, there's only one recorded Hajj that the Prophet completed. Then another point that you might not have realized is that you can find more detail on jihad than on salah in the Qur'an. So for example, it will stipulate what would be transgressions, how to beset the enemy, just much more of an exposition on jihad, how to make salah during battle. So all of these point towards that jihad is in fact an recognized aspect of the deen or the religion of Islam, and an under-recognized aspect of the Qur'an. And there's some of the battles. These are some of the battles of the Prophet. Look at them. If you can see the fine print there, or the small. That the Battle of Badr, 314 troops. That was in 624. The Battle of Uhud, Prophet himself fought in both those battles. 700 people fought in that battle after 300 deserted. Battle of Badr, the second Battle of Badr, which didn't really take place because the enemy, pulled out. 626 Common Era, 1,500. Interesting, eh? 500% increase from the first Badr to the second Badr. Khaybar, 628 Common Era, 2,000 people fighting in that battle on the side of the Prophet. Mecca, now it's 10,000. Hunayn, 12,000. And then Tabuk, the Tabuk expedition, 30,000 people fighting on the side of the Prophet. And so whoever says that the Prophet was not actively engaged in battle, they need to look at the facts. Let us quickly look at another few points before I go to the Quran. Contemporary apologetics. You see, the problem I have currently is that there is an apologetic attitude towards the concept of jihad. And many Muslims, contemporary Muslims, are in fact highlighting the non-military aspect of jihad and are turning jihad into something that is some form of non-violent struggle of sorts. And let me show you an example of this. So take a look at this.
So why do they need the extra word jihad to describe a holy war? Does it even mean holy war at all? Well, the short answer is no. Does it even mean holy war at all? Well, the short answer is no. What jihad really means is struggle. It's a major religious duty that many consider to be the unofficial 6th pillar of Islam, right below self-control, giving to the poor, and visiting Mecca. Technically, jihad means a struggle in the way of Allah. Fringe radical militant groups think that attacking the West is part of that struggle, but the majority of Muslims don't. Most of them are actually opposed to using the word jihad in that way because it associates the word with terrorism. So what does jihad mean to them? Well, in Islam, there are 2 types of jihad, the outer and the inner. The outer is the kind that defends Islam against outside aggression, like they did in the Crusades. The inner represents the internal spiritual struggle to seek self-improvement in the way of Allah. So basically, it's the struggle to be a better Muslim, both spiritually and in practice. The following passage, which is from a highly debated Islamic text called the Hadith, sums it up pretty nicely. In it, Muhammad says to a band of returning warriors, "You have come from the lesser jihad to the greater jihad, the striving of a servant of Allah against his own desires." So despite the negative attention it gets, jihad can refer to some really wonderful things. There's even a website called myjihad.org that highlights good jihads, and it's part of an entire online movement devoted to taking the word back from Islamic.
So the idea that we're getting from this concept is that, from this the discussion here, is that this is an apologetic response, that to underplay or to hide the militaristic or the militant or the violent aspect of jihad. And unfortunately so, because that is really not the spirit that's coming out of the Qur'an. If you read the Qur'an, jihad is in no way really essentially a peaceful activity. It's really seen to be part of qital. In fact, martyrdom is a very essential part or discussed in these verses on jihad, as you will see when we discuss the verses on jihad now in Surah An-Nisa. So that is the on the one way in which the concept is really not done justice to, is that people are underplaying or misrepresenting the idea. But then there's also those who abuse the concept. And let me look at the second point there on that list behind me, is that the contemporary abuse of the word jihad is by tyrants and by abusers of Muslims, the kings and the sultans, to invoke jihad, holy war, when they are actually trying to settle their own scores. So if they want to involve us in their battles, unjustly so, whether that battle is with anyone, then they invoke jihad and they abuse the concept of jihad and they rally the Muslim troops by abusing jihad. So that is another travesty. It's another abuse of the word jihad. Just as I mentioned, firstly, those who turn it into some sort of spiritual struggle, they're abusing the idea, they're misrepresenting the idea. But so do those people like Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein and all these kings and sultans and the Turkish sultans. They all abuse the idea of jihad to turn their battles into holy battles, which it's not. And so there also we have a problem with that abuse. And then historically, the third point there behind me, I want to talk to you about how jihad was abused to promote sectarianism. Because now the Sunni sectarian uses jihad to justify waging war against another Muslim country. The history is there. Muawiyah, the rebel, the renegade sultan, who waged war against Imam Ali, the just ruler, the ulil amr, as the Qur'an speaks about, those who are in just and in righteous possession of the office of governance and leadership. And so Muawiyah abused the concept of jihad to reflect his personal sectarian battle and his personal nationalistic struggle. And jihad is also abused by nationalists, those who advance war in the name of a nation or in the name of a tribe. And then it's nothing else but tribalism. So jihad minus the divine religious essence, which we will see later on, just becomes an unjust war. It just becomes bloodshed. It just becomes holy war, a fake holy war. And it just becomes terrorism, but terrorism in its worst sense, hurting and killing people unjustly. So we have to distinguish between what is jihad, which is a sacred obligation as per the Qur'an, and all these false forms of warfare that actually is based on chauvinism, nationalism, and also xenophobia. So where Muslims just simply have a hatred for something. And let me make it clear here. If I've in previous videos mentioned that the West, or those countries who are promoting satanic views and satanic ways, need to be confronted by all means, even through physically waging war on them, as Russia is doing. We are not saying that we are confronting them or waging war because they are the West. The West is not bad because they are the West, or because they are white, or because they are from Europe. We oppose the West because it is advancing an agenda that coincides with the agenda of Satan, the agenda that is anti-human, the agenda that is anti-justice, that is pro-elite, that is anti-God. And that is why jihad becomes necessary against the West. But we are not confronting the West because they are Western, they are white, they are European, they might as well be Japanese, they might as well be African for that matter. Whoever advances the agenda of injustice, of subduing the spirit of mankind, of promoting rank immorality and permissiveness in society to the level where humanity is under threat, they need to be confronted. And by chance now it's the West, it's the Europeans, it's the English, it's the Anglo-Saxon, it's the Khazarian or the Ashkenazi members, hegemony in Israel, or Zionist Israel. So I want to make it clear that jihad is abused by the priesthood. It is misrepresented by the priesthood. The priesthood is calling jihad like spiritual development falsely. The priesthood is calling their nationalist and their, in service of their sultans and their kings, they abuse the concept and use it to advance a xenophobic agenda. And Muslims are, whether we like it or not, Muslims are showing signs of being xenophobic. And there are often wars in history that were fought because of xenophobia. Muslims, for example, when they become part of a greater community where they are non-Muslims, they experience xenophobia. They have fear of people who do things in a different way. The first thing that Muslims do when they come to Britain and America is they become guarded. They become insular. Because they can't associate with what they see there. People loving dogs, people loving animals, people wearing particular outfits, clothing, people speaking, women having a particular level of confidence. These are not things that is worthy of jihad. The fact that women are engaging with men in the workplace and socially, the fact that there is no separation of sexes, the fact that people love animals, the fact that people have a certain level of social freedom. Those are not, you see, now the Muslims, there's a xenophobic reaction that comes to the fore when these Pakistani Arabs or whatever Muslims arrive in America and in Britain. And what they see as xenophobia, they then mistake it for jihad. And we must be very upfront about it. You cannot hate a nation for having their own cultural practices and having their own predispositions towards various things, unless those positions are at odds with what is natural and what is wholesome and what is healthy and what is fair. But a lot of these things that Muslims hate when they come to the West is actually just xenophobic. It's just that they cannot identify with it. So what if the Chinese want to eat lizards and snakes? It's fine. You see, that's a xenophobia that makes you hate now the Chinese for wanting to eat a different cuisine to you. But you will go there and eat funny stuff like crabs and crayfish. They find that maybe weird. So let me continue. And the next point I want to make. So this point I want to leave with you is that jihad is being highly abused by the priesthood. They are the ones that spread xenophobia, and they want to use jihad to further their xenophobic agenda. Osama bin Laden was a xenophobe. A lot of the Saudis, a lot of the Arabs are xenophobes, and their agenda is xenophobic. It's not an agenda of righteousness, of justice, of humanity. So let us quickly look at another perspective on jihad before I'm going to the actual verses of the Quran. And I want to show you how anti-Islamic operatives or propagandists, how they look at the concept of jihad. Take a look at this one here.
Approximately 9 to 10 years. He personally participates in or deputizes 86 battles.
Right.
So that's an average of 9+ battles a year, and they culminate in intensity until the moment he dies. Chapter 9 of the Quran is the last major chapter of the Quran to have been composed, and it is the most expansively violent. This is the one that starts off by saying this is a disavowal of all the treaties we have with polytheists. Chapter 9, verse 5, slay the infidels wherever you find them, lay siege to them, take them captive. Chapter 9, verse 29, fight the Jews and Christians until they pay you the poll tax and they feel subdued. Why? Chapter 9, verse 33, Islam has been made to prevail over every religion. So, I mean, chapter 9 is the most violent. It's the culmination of the Islamic message. It's the marching orders that Muhammad leaves Muslims with, which is why when he dies, Muslims conquer 1/3 of the known world within 150 years.
Right.
These were the
messages. By the sword.
Well, it's...
Okay, I think that's enough. I think what the point I'm trying to make with this clip is that because Muslims have abused the concept of jihad to further their xenophobic agendas and their chauvinistic and their nationalist Arab agendas, and that is true. That's a fact of history. I mean, what do you call the invasion of Jerusalem but a nationalistic undertaking? What do you call the conquest of Constantinople other than a nationalist pursuit? You see, we need to be honest about these things, that Muslims have not always been lily white and lily clean in their invoking of the term jihad. And so because Muslims have abused the idea of jihad to also incorporate xenophobic wars, nationalistic wars, sectarianist wars, religious sectarianism, all these wars over history, the Muslims and their priests have invoked jihad or have used jihad as an argument or as a reasoning behind these haram or these evil pursuits. It has allowed these anti-Muslim Muslim critics, such as we've seen here now, it has allowed them to use that record of the Muslims to then condemn or expose jihad as a form of conquest, a form of violent, barbaric onslaught by the Muslims to innocent non-Muslim peoples of the world. And so, yes, we have given them the ammunition, our record of unjust wars, of sectarian wars, the wars that started right from the time of Muawiyah and going all the way up to Osama bin Laden's xenophobic agenda. All of these wars in between, most of them, I can't even think of a just war. Maybe Salahuddin's war against the Crusaders, and maybe some modern wars where there's a pure defense of what is right, maybe Yemen, etc. But most of the wars are actually wars of offense, wars of chauvinism, wars of nationalism. And it has allowed these experts or these Islam critics like David Wood, etc., and many others in the Western media to condemn jihad, to see jihad as an evil. I guess if jihad was a war of chauvinism and nationalism, sectarianism, it would be evil. But that's not what jihad is, and that is what we aim to see here. In popular culture, the popular culture basically echoes exactly what we are saying here. And if you look at popular culture and you look at some of the books that are written, then you'll see that, in fact, I mean, look at some of these books here. Unholy War, War in the... That's one book that is out there. The Far Enemy. Let me just quickly make that a bit bigger. Why Jihad Went Global. That's also a common... Right? The other one was the Unholy War. The British government and Jihad. Jihad Revisited. So Jihad is a very, very common topic within Western media. And I don't think there's time for me to go through all of those books. But suffice it to say that those books echo more or less the view that jihad can become something that is benevolent, that is quite harmless, that is spiritual, or jihad can be violent. So it's basically echoing the ideas that Muslims are presenting about jihad. And the way that Muslims view jihad and the way that jihad is viewed in the Qur'an are very different. You see, Muslims have the two views on jihad: the meek, non-violent and benevolent idea of jihad, which is a watered-down jihad, spiritual jihad, and it has the violent abuse of jihad through, xenophobic wars, sectarian wars, etc. So anti-Islam and Western popular culture basically addresses it in those ways. So with that background in mind, I think we can go to the verses of the holy text, and I think this is really where the interesting part comes in, when we are able to look at what is jihad according to the Book of Allah. And let me quickly get that out, and we can have a look at jihad straight from the Quran. And here in chapter 4, verse 71, this is where the topic gets picked up, where Almighty Allah, God, says, to open up the discussion, speaks about jihad. And we must remember that when we speak about jihad, there's a family of terms. There's also qital, which is part of jihad. And that is, jihad and qital are almost synonymous. Qital is a value-laden concept. You see, qital is just warfare. But jihad is putting value, putting some sort of moral direction on the word qital. You understand? So whereas qital just means military combat or fighting or engaging in a war, jihad takes the concept of combat and fighting and waging war and infuses it with a spirit that is directed in a direction towards Allah. So this is, with this perspective in mind, let us explore what the holy text says about jihad. And here at Surah 471, it starts out by saying, Ya a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu khudhu hizrakum fanfiru thubatin aw infiru jami'an. Heed this, you who embrace this scripture. At a time of war, make due preparations, then advance either in battalions or all together. So in other words, the possibility of war in units as modern day warfare is fought, or an almighty all at once swooping on the enemy. Let's look at the next one. In your ranks, there are those who drag their feet, avoiding the front line. If the battle goes badly for you, they state, God was good to me. If the battle goes badly for you, they state, God was good to me because I did not experience physical battle along with him. Next verse. Should God's good fortune befall you in the battle, on the other hand, he states unashamedly, exposing the lack of real affection between him and you, oh dear me, why did I not join them and gain some grand glory? So I just want to quickly give you a summary of these 3 verses. Make due preparation, advance in battalions or all together. There are those who drag their feet, avoiding the front line. They find out good arguments whether there's victory or a loss or a defeat. And the first point that that I think we can take out of these first 3 verses is that jihad is really something that is scary. It is important, and there are many who will find any way possible to not get engaged in it. And that's an important takeaway from the first 3 verses, is that it's not easy. It's not everyone that has the stomach for it. And that there's a good deal of people that are finding any argument or any reason to argue that, listen, and to their own regret, because here it says, oh dear me, why did I not join them and gain some grand glory? So what it says is that there's actually glory involved in jihad, especially when there's victory or when there's conquest. But there's also the prospect of death and of suffering and of injury. So I guess that is the first 3 verses, what we get from those verses. Now comes the sort of summary of those 3 verses. Let those engage in combat for God's sake, who trade the life of this world for the life hereafter. Those who do engage in combat for God's sake, whether they get killed or whether they conquer, will we grant a fabulous reward. So in the same vein as we've looked at the first 3 verses here, is that the jihad is more than just waging war. Jihad is something that is otherworldly. It is something immortal. It is beyond our mere station of humanity. It becomes an immortal decision, a decision that goes beyond this life. And that really is a very, very, very different look or approach to warfare than simply warring for the sake of your tribe or for your nation or for, xenophobic reasons. And so here we learn that jihad is something of somebody who has already decided that there is an afterlife, and that afterlife does enjoy or require greater precedence in our decision making, in the factors that influence our decision making. So it's an extremely massive or major paradigm shift when we start prioritizing the afterlife and we start seeing the former life as a subordinate existence or a lesser existence than the afterlife. And that is clearly comes out here from this verse. Those who engage in combat, yuqatilu fi sabilillah, in other words jihad, for God's sake, they trade this life for the hereafter. And they will face either conquest, in other words, they will be able to conquer, or they may face the prospect of death. And let's move to the verse 475. How on earth? This is a crucial verse now. You see, I said to you that qital is mere fighting, but jihad is adding a value, is value infused fighting. It is fighting that is infused with a value system. So it's not just fighting. It's not just going to war. It's not just holy war. It is war that has a very specific purpose and a very specific cause. And here it comes. Verse 475. it exposes the value, the value system that is innate or integrally part of jihad. Here is the value system. How on earth can you abstain? وَمَا لَكُمْ لَا تُقَاتِلُونَ. The word وَمَا لَكُمْ, it means what is it with you? And I've translated it here as how on earth can you abstain from engaging in combat for God's sake, fi sabilillah, and for the sake of those who are suffering tyranny. Here we go now. The jihad is a battle in the cause of God and for the sake of those who are suffering tyranny. Wal mustad'afin, those who are being unjustly harmed, ill-treated, right? Those men, women, and children who are pleading, dear Lord, Rabbana, dear Lord, free us from the tyrannical elite of this country. Raise for us from your realm an ally. Raise for us from your realm a liberator. So do you see now that the idea of jihad is becoming clear in this verse? وَمَا لَكُمْ لَا تُقَاتِلُونَ. How on earth can you not fight? How could you find an objection? How could you question fighting when it is for the sake of God and for the sake of those who are suffering tyranny? Men, women, and children who are pleading, dear Lord, free us from this elite. أخرجنا من هذه القرية الظالم أهلها. Save us from this country, this place, whose people have become, who are terrorizing us. ظالم أهلها. And I've translated that as the elite of this country who are terrorizing, the tyrannical, who are tyrannizing us. Right? And وَجَعَلْنَا مِن لَدُنْكَ وَلِيًّا وَجَعَلْنَا مِن لَدُنْكَ نَصِيرًا. Raise us from your realm, مِن لَدُنْكَ, from your realm, from مِن لَدُنْكَ, وَلِيًّا, an ally, وَجَعَلْنَا مِن لَدُنْكَ نَصِيرًا, from your realm, a liberator. Nasir, the word Nasr, and the word Nasr is to do with help, but it's also to do with victory. So a victory, somebody who gives you victory, somebody who liberates you, a liberator. Next verse, the embraces of truth. We are still exploring the idea of jihad, of qital, for the cause of Allah. The embracers of truth fight for God's sake, while the deniers of truth fight for the system of corruption. So wage war against the allies of Satan with a certainty that the strategies of Satan are but flimsy. This is a very, very important part now of the concept of jihad, of qital, is that there are two systems that are morally not equivalent. The one is a system of morality, is a system of right, is a system of truth, while the opposing side is one that is one of distortion, of corruption, of perversion. And if you look at today's world, and if you make a quick assessment of who is fighting on the side of corruption, perversion, elitism, oppression, dispossession, enslavement, there's no doubt. We know who are the enslavers. We know who are the corrupt ones. We know who are the elite that are keeping those average people who are hardworking under their boot. And it says wage war against the allies of Satan, because these are the allies of Satan, the dispossessors. I mean, is there anyone that doubts that Israel is a land that is dispossessed people? Right. And now comes the objections to jihad, because we know it's necessary. We know, I mean, there's no questioning that you need to help those in distress, even by force of arms. And that is really what jihad is, helping those in distress by force of arms, saving the men, women and children who are the victims of tyranny, saving those who are being economically and culturally and politically put under the boot or subjected to severe oppression. And then we get the objections, and this is the verse that deals with that objection. Take a look at the people to whom it is said, cease and desist from siding with evil, and rather establish spiritual and social engagement while promoting moral refinement. The first sentence in this verse says, take a look at the people whom you say to them, stop your oppression, stop your tyranny, and come and become constructive, become engaged with society, promote morality, stop the agendas of perversion, the agendas of sexual exploitation, the agenda of economic exploitation. Such people who, when combat is prescribed for them, a distinct group within their midst feel the same fear of ordinary people that they should be feeling for God, and even worse fear. These are the people. Okay, I think let me put this verse for you first in a nice bigger context. Let me give you the scenario, and then you'll understand this verse. You see, at any given time, historically, when this verse was revealed, and in our times, there are those people who go along with the oppressive status quo, who go along with the oppressive current elitist agenda. And there was always an elitist agenda, right? In the time of the Prophet, the elitist agenda was the tribal elite, the cultural elite, the economic elite, those Arabs who made a living out of keeping people enslaved, poor, and downtrodden. But there are a mass of people who are not really in control of the agenda. These people are those who go along with the agenda because they just don't have the courage, right? They don't see a way clear of confronting the evil agenda. And that is really where this verse is coming in. This verse is saying, take a look at the people to whom it is said, cease and desist from siding with the agenda, with evil. Stop being silent in the face of the evil agenda, the elite agenda, and rather get engaged with the revolutionary movement, with the resistance to the agenda. Join the resistance. And it is said to them, come and become engaged with us, the resistance, and advance a moral agenda. Counter their evil, perversive agenda. Such people who, when combat is prescribed for them, now we come to the verse here, which we will understand better now. Such people who, when combat is prescribed for them, when you tell them, join us, let's confront the enemy, a distinct group within their midst feel the same fear of ordinary people that they should be feeling for God, and even worse fear. So you go to this middle, to this silent majority, this group that is technically the victims of the agenda of the elite. You find in them a lack of eagerness for jihad. Why? Because they fear the wrath, the backlash of the elite, and they can't see themselves confronting the elite. They fear the elite, ordinary people basically. They fear Bill Gates, they fear the deep state, they fear the billionaires more than they should fear God, and they fear them even more. Because what they are arguing is, if I confront these people, if I put my name out there and if I register my opposition, I will suffer the consequences. I will lose my job. In short, I will become what has happened to Julian Assange and to all these guys who have been willing to confront the enemy. This, when they query the command stating, our Lord and Sustainer, why prescribe military combat now and not postpone it for a while? Do you understand what they are saying? Their argument is so flimsy. It's an argument that says that we don't want to engage now. We're not prepared for the big sacrifice. We will tolerate these oppressors, these billionaires, these elite deep state operatives. We will tolerate them another few years because it's not yet time. But the Qur'an is saying, speaking through their mouths and advancing their argument, our Lord and Sustainer, Rabbana, why do you prescribe it right now and not postpone it for a while? We don't feel ready. Answer them as follows. And here the answer comes. The answer comes to these cowards. And that is what they are. They are in fact cowards. Because they are seeing the hurt. They are seeing the suffering. They are seeing the pain. But they just can't get themselves to do anything. And so they sit there in their homes and they want to talk about Hajj, making another Hajj, making more Sunnat Salah. They want to talk about halal food. They want to talk about wearing the attire that makes them Muslim. They want to talk about other Muslims who are evil and bad and in other countries. But they don't want to talk about this thing that they are required to do now, and that is pick up arms and go and confront the enemy. And the answer comes to them, the divine answer comes to them through the mouth of the Prophet. Answer them as follows. Qul. Answer them as follows. The joys of this world are limited. The joys of the world hereafter exceed it. For those who are disciplined, those who drag their feet will not experience an iota of injustice. And the way that the Quran uses that sense, وَلَا تُظْلَمُونَ فَتِيلًا. When the Quran uses that they will not experience an iota of injustice, normally that is a euphemistic implication. And if you read the Quran a lot, if you read a lot of verses, then you will discover that when Allah says, وَلَا تُظْلَمُونَ شَيْئًا or فَتِيلًا, what Allah is saying is that they will get justice. They will be dealt with. These cowards will be dealt with. That is what that verse, what that little phrase really means. وَلَا تُظْلَمُونَ فَتِيلًا. It means they will get absolute justice. They will be sorted out. I will give them what they deserve. And they will not get any less than what they deserve. So this verse really, we've seen the idea developing now from verse 71 in Surah Nisa, where it says that why is there such a thing as qital, fi sabilillah, which is jihad? It is there because it is there to end suffering. It is there to restore justice. It is there to eliminate those who are advancing the cause of perversion, of corruption, of deviation from what is humane and human. And that is why there is such a thing as jihad. Let's look at the next verse. Oh, continuing. So now the objections, those who are objecting, the objectors, sometimes called those who are dragging their feet in the Quran, the sitters, the qa'ideen. The next verse is a further debunking or a refutation of them. When Allah says, death will eventually catch up with you. You want to live another day. Death will eventually catch up with you, no matter where you are, even the most secure fortress. When good comes to them, they say, this is from God. But when bad things happen to them, they say, this is from you. Tell them, ultimately, it all comes from God. What is it with these people that they cannot fathom a simple narrative? So this verse 78 is again addressing those who are lagging, those who are dragging their feet, those who are saying that jihad is only spiritual, those who are saying that you should rather make salah, you should rather wear a long beard, you should rather be a good Muslim. These are all more important. And leave the jihad, leave the qital. When there is a time for qital, a time for jihad, those who are full of excuses are decried. They are regarded in a very negative sense by these verses. Good that has come to you has been from God, while the bad that happened to you has been of your own making. So we sent you to humanity to convey the message, for God is enough of a witness. Obedience to the messenger is obedience to God. As for those that are averse, do know that we have not tasked you with any accountability for them. Very, very crucial point. The obedience to the messenger is obedience to God. مَا يُطِعِ الرَّسُولِ فَقَدْ أَطَاعَ اللَّهِ. Now there are people who in their misguided state make this little phrase a justification for the books written by Bukhari, which he ascribes to the Prophet. Like, if anyone now comes and says the Prophet said you must spit over your left shoulder 3 times in the middle of the night, then that is the obedience to the Prophet. That is absolute nonsense. It's not referring to hadiths here. مَا يُطِعِ الرَّسُولِ فَقَدْ أَطَاعَ اللَّهِ. This is not referring to books that men have authored or that people are claiming as the words of the Prophet. The word here, مَا يُطِعِ الرَّسُولِ فَقَدْ أَطَاعَ اللَّهِ, the word Rasul here is used in its general sense. You see, there is a legalistic meaning of Rasul and there is a general sense where Rasul is. You see, a messenger can be a messenger with a capital M, which is a messenger of God, or a messenger can be a messenger with a small m, which is a muballigh, which is somebody that is bringing the message to you, the Qur'an, who is delivering the Qur'an to you. And the Qur'an here refers to the messenger with a small m. It is the muballigh, it is the imam, it is the mahdi, it is the imamun mahdiyun. And at any given time in our existence as mankind on this planet, we have to have a leader. If we're not able to appoint a leader, then we have failed in our mission. And we cannot operate like sheep, running left, right, and center all over the place. If there are 3 of you, you need to appoint somebody to be in charge, to be the one that offers the direction to the other 2. Or that at the very least will be the deadlock breaker. And that will be the final arbiter in whatever direction you want to take. So in this verse, when the Quran speaks about مَا يُطِعِ الرَّسُولِ فَقَدْ أَطَاعَ اللَّهِ, we are speaking here about the Imam of our time. We're speaking here of the Muballigh of your time. We are not talking about books that have been written 500 and 1,000 years ago. Those books are not, you cannot obey a book, my brothers. You can obey the Quran, but you cannot obey hadith books, which are all over the place. Some hadiths say, do this, and other hadiths say, do the exact opposite. It's not from Allah. So what we are arguing here and what we are reading from this verse is, مَا يُطِعِ الرَّسُولِ فَقَدْ أَطَاعَ اللَّهِ. If you follow the just leader, the just muballigh, the just messenger, small m, then you have followed Allah. وَمَيْ تَوَلَّى فَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ عَلَيْهِمْ حَفِيظًا. And this is a message to those who are spreading the word. You, though, who are watching this and spreading the word of truth, who are also muballighin, who are also a'imma in your own right, and there are some of you that I know, my good friends here who are watching these videos, that are in charge of people, that are the leader in their communities, that have a massive following. Alhamdulillah. It is you that is addressed here. Faman tawalla, whoever tawalla means turns his back on you, walks away, dismisses you, says, nah, I don't care, become indifferent. Those who become indifferent, dismissive, walk away from you. فَمَنْ تَوَلَّى فَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ عَلَيْهِمْ حَفِيظًا. And this is a comforting to you, the people who are leading others, who are running with this message, with this Qur'an message, that you don't have to account for their behavior. You just have to account for your having delivered that message. Alhamdulillah, it's a good source of comforting. We don't have to answer for not having an army of 10,000 or 100,000 in jihad. We just have to account for the fact that we have made the call and they have declined. They claim to be subordinate, but when they leave your presence, there is a clique that engages in subversive meetings where your words are opposed. God keeps a record of their subversive meetings. Avoid them and trust in God, because God's trust is enough. The discussion in these few verses have now shifted gradually from what jihad is, when it is required, who are the people that will engage in it, those who sell this world, the life of this world for the year after. And it has now slowly shifted to the objectives, the conscientious objectives, those who are the laggards, those who are the draggers of their feet, those who sit at home, the qa'idin. In Surah Tawbah it speaks about the qa'idin, those who sit, right? Those who choose to rather sit at home. And now it goes deeper into their position and what they really become, because of their cowardice, because of their refusal to engage in warfare, in real jihad. And let me just at this point mention to you, jihad doesn't have to be with a gun. It can be propaganda warfare, and when we conduct propaganda warfare, it is not propaganda, it is actually truth warfare. We are assaulting falsehood with truth. And so let me tell you that jihad is anything that really puts you in danger, right? So jihad could be physically drawing the sword or the assault rifle, or the shoulder-launched rocket launcher, as is done now in the Donbass region in Russia. But it could also be the truth war, the war of assaulting falsehood, assaulting propaganda with truth bombs. So we can also be flinging truth bombs at their propaganda. And so let me just clarify that I'm not here today telling you that I want you to go and join the army. Yes, I guess if there's a need for you, I wouldn't tell you not to do it. But what I'm really asking for you is to put yourself out there, to take that risk. Like Julian Assange, he never fired a single bullet, but his life is in danger. Why? Because his truth was more powerful than the guns and the missiles of Iraq, of Saddam. So they claim to be subordinate, but when they leave your presence, there is a clique that engages in subversive meetings where your words are opposed. God keeps a record of their subversive meetings. Avoid them and trust in God, because God's trust is enough. So the cowards, slowly but surely, the cowards become an internal fifth column. They become a subversive element within the community of truth fighters. And the Quran just exposes that fifth column and just alerts us that these cowards will actually become dangerous because of their cowardice. And if you look at today also, there are those who carry favor with the West, who want to be cozy under the wing of the elite, the Western elite. And I was told that I must be careful how I use the word West. So I'll not say the West in an unqualified way, because the West is not evil by nature of being West. It is the elite, it is the oppressive elite that is lodged, that is attached to the West, that is really the enemy that we are confronting. Do they not reflect on the Quran? Had it been from other than God, they would find many discrepancies therein. So I think, just going back to, right, so that's just a mention of the Quran, and let us quickly look at the other verses that come up here. When an incident that can cause fear or insecurity comes to their attention, they carelessly spread the news of it. If they could only report such matters to the messenger and to the authorities, then qualified investigators would be notified. Had it not been for God's benefit and kindness towards you, all but a few would be following Satan. It's a very interesting verse. That verse is still addressing the cowards who are finding reason not to be engaged in the battle. They're hiding, behind the scenes. And it also raises a particular attitude of these people. When something goes wrong, let's say a bomb or some sort of hardship is experienced, when an incident that causes fear or insecurity, they carelessly spread the news of it. They go and they spread panic. Now, let me give you an example. We have in our society, this is going to be a minute, so let me just quickly give you this personal experience. In our society, in this part of the world, we have an economic elite that really controls everything in this country. We have about 10 companies that own literally 70-80% of the economy. Like in America, they have the Fortune 500. I guess we can say that South Africa has a Fortune 10. About 10 companies. They're also interconnected and mutually invested. So they're also mutually invested in each other. So they're not independent entities. But what happens is that they control the media. And what happens here is that if anything happens in society, like for example COVID, right? Few people get sick with the severe flu and they die. Or let's say the crime problem, a few people are robbed, shot, hijacked, kidnapped. These things are splashed in the media. These things are highlighted madly in the media. It's blasted to everyone. Why? Why are they doing it? When an incident that can cause fear or insecurity comes, they carelessly spread the news of it. So in other words, it's in their interest to weaken and to destabilize society. And that is the whole aim of it. I just made a video about Iran recently and how the poor lady Mahsa Amin, who died while in police custody, although I reject the idea of arresting a female for not wearing a scarf properly. But we need to be careful, arresting her is wrong, but we cannot then put murder on those people's hands and tell them that they killed her. The videos that I've seen was that she seems to have had a terrible cardiovascular, whatever, incident, and there was a failure either in the brain or in the heart, I'm not sure, but she had a serious incident, but I cannot see any physical harm. But coming back to this verse, what this verse is saying is that these people, because they want to destabilize our society, the society of people who are trying to be righteous, they spread fear and insecurity. They use وَإِذَا جَاءَهُمْ أَمْرٌ مِنَ الْأَمْنِ أَوْ الْخَوْفِ أَذَاعُوا بِهِ. Now, أَذَاعُوا بِهِ, the word إِذَاعَ means broadcast. They broadcast it. They make it a big thing. And that is really the إِذَاعَ of the West, is BBC, and they are the إِذَاعَ. It's the broadcasting systems of the West, of the Western elite, let me say that. And these people who are in their camp, the cowards also, they carelessly spread this news. If they could only report such matters to the messenger, to the leader, small m, and to the authorities, then qualified investigators would be notified. Had it not been for God's benefit and kindness towards you, all but a few of them would be following Satan. The point that this verse is making is that you are gaslit so often. The gaslighting knows no end. And the gaslighting causes you to turn away from your own people, from jihad, from the righteous mu'mineen. Because what? You've been gaslit. You believe that Iran or any society that is trying to implement some sort of version of the Qur'an, that they are evil. And I'm not saying they are perfect, but there are societies where they are making an attempt. Whether it is Malaysia, whether it is Yemen, whether it is Palestine, everyone is trying. There are people who are trying to implement some sort of righteous system. And then the last two verses, go then and fight for God's sake, knowing that you need account for none but yourself. Do rouse the community of embracers, though, the mu'mineen, for that raises the prospect of God ending the havoc caused by the enemies of truth. Remember, God's havoc and destruction are greater. Wallahu ashaddu ba'sa wa ashaddu tankila. Go then and fight for God's sake. So here in the final second last verse of these verses that speak about jihad and qital, it says that go and fight, and you need to account for nobody but yourself. Those who are sitting at home, those who are cowards, don't worry with them. You account for yourself. But call them, do rouse the community of embracers. Tell them, those who are sincere about their religion, tell them, listen, let's rise up, let's fight, let's throw truth bombs, let's go and fight them in whatever means is realistic and possible. For that raises the prospect of God ending the havoc caused by the enemies of truth, because they are causing havoc on earth. You see, havoc is illa nafsaka wa harrid al-mu'minin. Asa Allah ay yakuffa ba's alladhina kafaru. When you are able to muster the courage and to go forward and to confront them, either with just speaking the truth, just by means of a demonstration, or whatever other means under your power, you have the chance for Allah to put an end to their corruption, their evil, their reign of terror on this planet. Then finally, anyone who joins a good cause shares in its benefit, while anyone who joins a bad cause carries its burden. If you are not on the battlefield, if you are not busy confronting the enemy, then you are probably sitting under their protection and enjoying their benefits. And when you are living under the wing of the enemy, enjoying their benefits, and the wing of the enemy, I mean the wing of the modern oppressive elite, if you are sitting under their wing, enjoying the benefits that they offer you, then you have chosen your side, and you will share in its burden. God is the one that assigns to each its due. And that, my friends, are the verses that speak about jihad. And all we have to do then is, we have to do our inferences now. I have to look at what jihad is and answer these questions in light of these verses. What then is jihad? First of all, jihad is qital, any form of fighting, any form of confronting the enemy or evil in a means that is realistic and possible, but infused with the values of compassion for those who are being oppressed, for the values of justice for those who are being unjustly treated, for the values of morality and humanity, and to end the rule of immorality and perversion. That is what we mean by jihad. Jihad is a confrontation of perversion, of corruption, of the elite, of all oppression. That is what jihad is. Jihad is the removal of the oppressors from the face of the earth through whatever means necessary and possible. And yes, I concede that there is a jihad that is in the heart, but I wouldn't categorize that in this particular category, because that we are speaking now about this, the aspects of spiritual growth. But in this sense, when jihad is raised in the Qur'an, it is not a spiritual jihad. It is qital, it is fighting, it is exerting, it is putting yourself out there, putting yourself in danger. What jihad is not from these verses, it is not a battle in the cause of Arab nationalism. It is not a battle for Shia sectarianism. So if Iran adopts Shiism as its battle cry and its motto, it has lost the essence, it has lost the value of jihad. It becomes just warfare. It becomes Persian nationalism. It becomes Shia sectarianism. And I caution them, I caution my Iranian brothers always, that you need to address the undue force and strain that has been placed on the revolutionary outlook by those who are traditionalist clergy, who have their own agenda. And that is a Shia agenda. So this is, again, I repeat it here, that if you fight for the cause of your madhab, or for the cause of your sect, or for the cause of your doctrine, untested doctrines, you have not made jihad. You are busy fighting just a war. And I'm reminded of a prominent cleric who questioned our fight against apartheid, who questioned our fight against gangsterism and drugs here in our own town, in my town, because we did not invoke the Shia slogans. And he mentioned to us, he said, your people are not martyrs who die because they didn't invoke the Shia doctrines. And I want to, that is nonsense. You see, the Quran doesn't speak about fighting in the cause of a doctrine or fighting in the cause of untested. It is simply speaking about men, women, and children who are being dispossessed, oppressed, harmed, tyrannized by the elite. So the point I want to make is jihad is not sectarianism. Jihad is not xenophobia, because that's a very common battle cry, is that we need to fight the kuffar because the kuffar are dirty, and the kuffar in the West, and normally they would associate the kuffar with anything that is not Muslim. That is not jihad. Point one, I told you what is jihad. What is not jihad are all those things. Its relevance is, in terms of the previous verse that we've looked at, it is there to restore the justice, the beauty, the humanity on earth amongst mankind, and to end the reign of terror of the elite and of the oppressor elite. And then finally, it is a means of filtering real players from dubious players. You see, as long as you don't move to put yourself at risk, you will never know who your real friends are. As long as your battle is in the armchairs in your living room and in your lounge and in the mosque, on the soft carpets of the mosque, you will never know who the real Muslims are or the real mu'mineen are. But when your battle moves to the dangerous grounds of confronting the enemy, then you will soon discover how many real Muslims you are. You know, when the Prophet set off to Uhud, there were 1,000 men in the army. And when they arrived at Uhud, how many were there? Only 700. 300 of them decided, this is not for us. I don't want to lose my life. I don't even want to lose a limb. I don't want to get hurt. It's physically not for me. And that is why it is so important in Islam that we actually, jihad is a means of filtering the mu'mineen, the true mu'mineen, from those who are lukewarm and those who are, as they say, laggers or dragging their feet. So, in summary, yes, Osama bin Laden is not a mujahid. He's a xenophobe. All those who fight because they hate the West for being the West are just xenophobes. But those who confront the enemy, whether the enemy is Western or African or wherever, because that enemy is spreading injustice, perversion, corruption, immorality on earth, then that is jihad. In defense of people who are the victims and suffering under those people. That is jihad, not xenophobia and sectarianism and nationalistic wars. And believe me, 90% of Muslims today, I'm making this, I'm going to put my neck out and say 90% of when you are gaslit by Muslims, it is for the wrong reason. You see, when the Saudis or when Saddam Hussein or any other Muslim tells you, tries to get you up in arms, like, let me take an example of this movie, The Lady from Heaven, the movie that was launched in Britain. You see, the people were rallied there to a frenzy, like jihad, but all that they were rallied for was for some sectarian battle, some battle to defend the reputation of men who were not even prophets, men who were not even anything besides just regular human beings. So if somebody condemns a Sahabi, somebody criticizes a president of a country, why are you taking it personally? You like the Jews, like the Israeli Jews. When you criticize Israel, you're criticizing their religion. Please, I think that is the problem, is that we're conflating jihad with our own sectarianism and with our own xenophobia. That what we saw in London a year ago, I think, or close to a year ago, it was not jihad on the streets. It was just simply xenophobia and sectarian outrages that were invoking the idea of holy war. Why don't those same people that were out on the streets, why don't I see them confront the enemies who are locking up Julian Assange? Why don't I see those same people confront the UK government for spreading poverty and hardship in Britain, and for spreading poverty and hardship throughout the world, in fact? So let us clarify our understanding of jihad. It is that which is an exertion or the utmost fight or confrontation of evil in order to establish righteousness, justice, morality, etc. It is not anything else. Its relevance is to remove evil and injustice from the face of the earth, and it is the ultimate test of who are the people who are truly committed to the deen of Islam. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.